Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is snow. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first and by far most common way to hear the verb snow used is to mean to cause to fall like or as snow. So maybe it's easier to break this definition into two parts. So to cause to fall like snow or to cause to fall as snow. So really we're talking about this action of snowflakes falling from the sky as a form of precipitation. And we'll talk a little more about this word as a noun and the noun snowflake a little later in the video. A second way you might hear this verb snow used is to mean to persuade someone or to deceive them. So sometimes this is used like someone is being tricked. You should know that snow is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all we need to do is add ing to form snowy. And I know some of my former students might be looking at this word and thinking, Katie always said when a verb ends with consonant, vowel, consonant, that we need to double it. But here, O and W together are just making a vowel sound. So this is kind of a break from our normal rule. So we're not adding a second W before the ing. So our progressive form is pronounced snowing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. And because this verb ends with the vowel sound O, snow, our ed is just going to make a D sound. Snowed, snowed. I have two phrasal verbs for us to look at today that are connected to our verb snow. The first one is to snow in. And this means to cause someone or something to be unable to leave a building or maybe a particular area due to a large quantity of snow. Here is an example of this usage in a sentence. The storm snowed us in for 4 days. So what this sentence is suggesting is someone was unable to leave their home for 4 days because there was such a huge quantity of snow. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is snow under. This has a meaning that's not connected to the weather. Its meaning is to overwhelm or be at capacity to absorb or deal with something. Many times you're going to hear this phrasal verb connected to someone's work or the quantity of work that they have. So let's take a look at another example sentence. He is snowed under by large stacks of paperwork. It's going to be several days before he catches up. So I think this phrasal verb comes from the idea, if you can imagine someone having just loads and loads of work kind of stacked up, almost to the point where it feels like it's going to fall in like an avalanche or just a great quantity of snow, right, that you're, again, unable to move through. So, again, maybe not something you hear all that commonly, but in case you do, now you'll know what it means. Now, let's continue practicing using our verb snow in a few different verb tenses. Today, we'll practice the simple past, the simple present, and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the simple past. Remember, we're using this verb tense to talk about an action that was completed at some definite or known time in the past. So what you're going to sort of notice in a lot of my example sentences here is my subject is going to be it. And I think this is the most common way you're going to see this verb sort of connect and be used. So it is referring to the weather. right? The weather that is responsible for this action. But no matter what our subject is, we are going to use the ed form of our verb in the affirmative only, in the simple past tense. So let's take a look at that. It snowed 2 feet in the mountains yesterday. So again, we have this known time period, yesterday, right? And now we know kind of a quantity of snow. If I want to make a negative sentence in the simple past tense, I'm going to use did not and then the base verb. So I'm not using the ed form in the negative. Here's another example sentence. It didn't snow in October. So again, we have this definite or known time period, the month of October. If I want to make a yes or no question in the simple past tense, I'm going to start with did. I'm going to have my subject, which again is it, the weather, and then my base verb. So notice again, in our question, we're not using that ed form of the verb. Did it snow last week? Right? And that's something we could say, yes, it did, or no, it didn't. Now, let's take a look at the simple present. We tend to use this verb tense to talk about habits and routines. We also use it with facts as well. And the thing to remember about the simple present is when our subject is it, he, or she, then we need to add an S to our verb. And again, our subject here is going to be it, so you're going to see that extra S on the base verb. It always snows on his birthday. So maybe we're talking about someone who has a birthday in the month of January, and it just seems like it is the habit or routine for there to be this kind of weather event on his birthday. If I want to make a negative sentence in the simple present, I'm going to use do not and then the base verb when my subject is I, you, we, or they. But when my subject is it, he, or she, then we'll use does not and then the base verb. You might hear native speakers use the contraction form doesn't. It doesn't snow in July. And this would likely be true if you're living in most of the United States and other countries as well. Summer is generally warmer. This might not be true, though, if you are in South America, right? Our seasons are sort of reversed. If I want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, I'm going to start with do or does, then I'll have my subject, then the base verb. Does it snow in November very often? Right? In some places in the United States, yes, it commonly does snow in the month of November. In other warmer climates, it might be very unlikely to have snow in November. Now let's take a look at our present perfect progressive examples. We're using this to describe an action that started in the past and it's continuing into the present. It's happening now or it's ongoing. So I like to remind people present perfect progressive. You see 3 P's there. This verb tense is going to have 3 parts. So to make the present perfect progressive, you need to use have or has, depending on what your subject is. Then you're going to use the participle been, B-E-E-N, and then you'll use the ing or progressive form of a verb. So let's take a look at an affirmative example. It has been snowing for over 10 hours straight. So it implies it started snowing about 10 hours ago, and it has continued to snow up until this present time, or the moment that I'm speaking, or maybe if I was texting this to a friend, at the moment I'm writing it. If I want to make a negative present perfect progressive sentence, I need to insert not after have or has. You might hear native speakers use the contractions haven't or hasn't. Here's another example. It hasn't been snowing all day, even though we were expecting it. So perhaps somebody watched a weather report on their local news the night before, and so they had this expectation that snow would be ongoing through the course of the day, but it hasn't happened. Finally, if I want to make a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive, I'm going to start with have or has, then I'll have my subject, then the participle been, and then the ing form of the verb. Has it been snowing very long? And I'll point out that present perfect progressive is really common when we're talking about the length of an activity. Or the amount of time that has passed from something beginning up until now. That's commonly how you'll see it used. Now, let's take a look at some words that are related to snow, our verb. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form. Same spelling, same pronunciation. So the noun snow is referring to water vapor that has been frozen into ice crystals, and it might be falling in light white flakes, or it might be lying on the ground as sort of a white layer. So you can see a little bit of it in the picture I have down here in the bottom corner of your screen. And you can also see the noun form in my example sentence. The kids love to play in the snow. And the word the is giving me a good clue that the next word is a noun. So I know some people will ask how I tell the difference. So that's a good way. If you see an article or an adjective before something, generally that's going to be a noun. Can also help to identify if there's another verb in the sentence. So here the verb is love. And there are so many different words connected to snow, different compound words. I've picked out a couple for us to look at, but please note this is not a complete or full list. The next word we'll look at is snowflake. This can have a couple different meanings. It could be referring to a sort of single flake or crystal of snow. So sometimes, just as it begins to snow, someone might say, are those snowflakes I see? Is that falling snow? But there is another usage or meaning for the noun snowflake, and I would say it has been used a great deal in the last couple of years, and it's generally referring to someone who is overly sensitive. The idea is their feelings get hurt easily. I think the other idea perhaps comes from this idea of a single snowflake could melt very quickly. So that idea of just kind of giving up. So here is an example sentence and how you might have heard that be used. Older adults have made fun of cancel culture and snowflakes. Now, if those two things don't mean that much to you, don't worry about it. But if you follow the news, those are some terms that you might hear now and again. Another noun is snowman. This is a representation of a human figure who's been created with compressed snow. So imagine kind of taking snow in your hands and packing it together. And again, I've down here in the bottom of your screen, I've got a nice little picture of a snowman. So it's very common to use either household items or things you find out in nature to give the figure eyes, a nose, perhaps a mouth. Might use sticks to make arms. But it's just a way people kind of amuse themselves when there's snow on the ground. And you usually need a certain type of snow to be able to pack it together and have it sort of retain that shape. Here is an example of snowman in a sentence. We built several snowmen after the last big snowstorm. So again, you can probably figure this out, but here's another compound word with snow in it. Right, so this was a weather event that produced a lot of snow. one last word for the day, and that is snow day. This is a day on which school or maybe some other businesses are closed due to heavy snowfall or other just really bad winter weather. So, an example of how you might have heard this used recently is kids are afraid that snow days may not exist any longer due to remote learning. So this might be in the view of some children who look forward to that idea of having school canceled sort of unexpectedly due to the weather, might be something negative coming from the pandemic, right? So now most people are used to learning at home, and we have better infrastructure or systems in place to do that. So there have been jokes and other comments that now going forward, even if it's not safe for us to physically get out and go to school, we can still have school. You'll just log on and do it from your computer. So snow days might be a thing of the past. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.